At your 80th birthday, you said you would take me and Julius Malema to Marikana to meet the widows of the departed miners. We could not go because you were not well. You are gone now. I am left to go alone. But I will be guided by your spirit. As you said, and I know that Julius Malema will go with me so that we can go and heal the wounds of the Marikana widows.
Kuba buhlungu kakhulu kumqa uthetha ngalondo leyo futhi bofaka abantu pha endabeni. Kuba mina ndandibukele ngawamamehlo. Into eyayisenzeka pha imoto zamapolisa iveni. Wayesithi umuntu ngexesha sedutyuliwe once abona ba uyasukuma. Ihipo ijike iye ngomva iyomqumza.
Kuba buhlungu ndade ho no banene ha sala re thetswa ho tata o ntlafatswa American ho etsiwa eng ka mokga bohloko ba dira botlhoko ba strike. Ha ona le tholetsa.
Sibona sesisuka siretrenchwa nakule misebenzi sisebenzayo emayi. Sibona sesixelelwa ngento yokuba kungena enye ikhampani singakhange sicaciselwe. Xa siqwalasele emaphepheni sifumanisa uba nezo khampani ezo kudala zangenza operator kwalapha kulolomini lo wasibulalayo phaya entabeni.
Sisahlala nawo emekhukhwini sihlala sonke apha. Akwabikho izindlu. Kuseyimikhukhu akho manzi lento ibithethwa ngomkhulu wala. Kusafana.
Kulento babelwela akukabikho tshintsho olungako because okokuqala imisebenzi ayikho nje basebetshilo ukuthi asifumani imisebenzi kudala silapha yabona ukuthi sinje sizimba balo bizwa ngamagama emikhukhwini kunje kuyilonto yabo.
The mine has fired a lot of people so that it can give the money to some of the people that were in the strike. So some of them got fired, so I don't think that they've got what they were fighting for. Some families have lost breadwinners.
Urhulumente wethu ubemela into yoba mhlambi kubantu bonke abenzekala lantlekele yenzekalayo unento wayenzayo yena. Sometimes abanye babe nemizi benabantwana afundise abantwana babo akwazi usapota abantwana bafamily yonke.
A sad tale of events indeed. But on that note, we want to say, Dumelang Sanbonani, good evening, South Africa. Welcome to Expressions. If you don't know this by now, we are definitely the place for you to air your views. We are your #1 current affairs show here on SABC. I am your host, Jacqueline Mapala.
Sinbingelele Sinamgele. I'm your host, Umxolisi Wagomasango, coming to you live this Tuesday evening. Jobanbona, we're not broadcasting in our usual studio as tonight, Jackie. We anticipate a fiery debate as we have an all-engaging studio audience, Sinbingelele Sinamgele, Expressions, who are going to be with us this evening as we commemorate the August Marikana monumental killings, Jackie.
Yes, Mko. It has been 6 years since what has been termed as the Marikana massacre took place. On the 16th of August, on 2012, Mko, we saw the South African Police Service, the SAPS, opening firing on a crowd striking of miners in the northwest, Mko. And I mean, this was definitely devastating, and as a country, it completely saddened us. And the police on that day killed 34 miners and 74 were seriously injured.
Now, at the back of that, their widows, Jackie, have been left alone to fend for themselves as well as their orphans. See Expressions now. We took to Marikana, of course, which is khulumisane nabo, check up on them, find out ukuthi ngabe baqhuba kanjani after this whole ordeal. Are they really trying to make ends meet, and how are they going about it? Well, do take a look at this insert. sisezinyathelweni of that fateful event that took place on the 16th of August 2012, where about 34 miners were brutally killed in what was called a brutal fight for survival, khona la eMarikana. Now, some of the scenes unfolded right where we are. See Expressions namhlanje, we are here, which is khulumisane nemindeni that were affected, to find out how all of this changed their lives, to find out ukuthi ngabe baqhuba kanjani and how they are now picking up the pieces of their lives after that moment that changed their lives forever.
I didn't want to believe it because bengisitshela mina ukuthi I want to see when I put him in the grave that really he's gone.
Ukhuluma ukuthi abantu bayibuka from a distance, abanye babo. Ngikhumbuza le documentary esiyibuka ngomvulo. I think bekuyena ubaba sekhaya, ubaba kakho uthena into bebayifuna ukuthi bathole impilo engqo for imindeni yabo. That's all they want.
I wish people can watch that video and see what those people really wanted. They just wanted a better life for their families. They didn't want to fight. They didn't want a violence.
Are you guys really getting the support? Because I can imagine it's kunzi.
Actually, luckily I've got a medical aid, so I a psychologist so that I can be better and my child also. So for those people who don't have that kind of things, it's very, I think it's very, very painful and difficult for them to survive.
For a person who affected Marikana directly, Jengao, what is it that you'd like to see happening right now?
I would like to see the society accept that what happened to Marikana is the same thing that happened to Shamford. If they can treat it that way, it will make me happy.
Uzothanda ukubona kwenzakani manje?
Uzothanda iMarikana, that place. Kuba nesikhumbuzo zakuthi there were people who died here, and then ihlale ikhona engqondweni like to South African history. Yeah, niyo into engathanda ukuthi ngaba khona.
And that was Umco on the ground there in Marikana. But to help me unpack this also important discussion that we're going to be having in studio, I am joined by Aliki Sagas, who is the writer and director of a documentary called Strike the Rock. Welcome to Expressions. I'm also joined by Bishop Dr. Joe Sieko, who is the former president of the South African Churches. Welcome to Expressions as well. And I'm joined by Gillian Scudder, who is representing gender disparities. Welcome to Expressions. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having us.
And as you know, we do have a studio audience that's going to be robust and bringing a lot of the insights that are coming up. Nko is going to obviously join them a little bit later on the show, but we're going to get straight into it. Alika, let me start with you. I mean, they say that films have a major influence on how people perceive current issues. What was your intention or motive around why you wanted to put together your documentary?
Yes, so Strike a Rock was really formed out of, I was a student when the Marikana massacre happened, and I was devastated that this could happen in a post-apartheid country like ours. And at the time I was studying, and I thought, I've read an article by a journalist called Kamali Tanaika called The Missing Voices of Marikana. And after having followed all the discourse and the media around the Marikana massacre, I realized that there are voices that have kind of been erased from the discourse. And these are the voices of the women who live around the mine, the women of Sikala Sonke, and a lot of them are here today, which is awesome. Whose stories and whose fight and whose activism on the ground, and a lot of them were really leading the activism on the ground, no one knew about. So that was really the intention of the documentary, to put kind of to place the women's voices back into the discourse of Marikana and to show their activism. And that in turn shows the living conditions around Marikana and around Kaneng, the informal settlement which arose around Lonmin, the third largest platinum mine in the world, and really to show how the living conditions haven't changed. And even 6 years now after the Marikana massacre, people still live in really terrible, terrible living conditions around the mine.
And I also need to mention, I think for the viewers, Kochaya, as well, that we also have another documentarian as well who is going to be in our Cape Town studios. We're anticipating that we'll have a conversation with him. Yeah, so we'll try, because I think his input is quite interesting as well in terms of the documentary that he did. But I want to bring you in, Bishop. I mean, what is the role of the churches? What is the role of faith-based movement within this kind of space? I mean, when we're talking about Marikana, we're talking about issues of dignity. We're also talking about issues of the value that we place on the lives of the poor. And I just want to hear your take on this.
Well, you know, the responsibilities of churches is to provide pastoral care. And the Marikana incident challenged us in many ways, because it's not only about those who were massacred. It's about the community. It's about families. It's about the perpetrators. And so we have a responsibility to engage each one of them in their own spaces, so that the hurt, the wounds can be healed. But of course, an incident like that does divide the community, and we have a role to pull them together, to reconcile them, and to create an atmosphere of peace, and enable people to begin to say, well, it has happened, we need to do something so that it does not happen again.
And I think just to also bring a little bit of context to the viewers, Kochai, around why this conversation is so important. I think specifically why we're having it here at the SABC is that the fact that we actually flighted the documentary called Minus Shot Down, and it was screened on this particular platform. And then we wanted to obviously take the conversation further. As a young person, we wanted you to be a part of this conversation. And you know, I don't know how I did this, but I never do this by myself. And I just wanted to say, Nko is with us.
Of course I'm with you, Jackie. I'll never let you fly
is definitely with us.
Of course, Jackie, this all-important conversation is, of course, at the back of that documentary by one of the documentarians that we're supposed to have joining us in Cape Town, possibly Minus Shot Down from last week. What does this mean for Wena Umuntu? We've brought it down to you. We've got an all-important studio audience which is also joining us. This all-important conversation continues after this break.
Welcome back if you have just joined us. Tonight we are having an also important discussion around the Marikana massacre. And of course I've got my panelists here who are going to be helping me to unpack this. And I think just before the break we didn't really get an opportunity to speak to you, Gillian. But I want to speak specifically about the documentary Miners Shot Down. And you've watched it. What is your take on that documentary?
Well, as everyone knows, I'm probably the only person who did a critique on the film, and it didn't just come out of nowhere. We, as Media for Justice, Sipho Singiswa and myself, had been working in Marikana from the day after the massacre occurred. On that day, we were there, and we were there for 2 years. So we had been covering the story and sharing it on our social media platform right from that point. Okay, so we had been working in that community. The film itself, I critiqued it for a number of reasons, and the one was specifically the glaring absence of women's voices or women's bodies or anything within that film. It was simply a masculinist take on the story. And I mean, any struggle in South Africa is an integral struggle. There's no binary between male and female in those struggles as such. There are women who work in production in Marikana. That was a complete absence of that. Women on the ground sustain those extended strike periods. It's women who are carrying the burden. Women carry the burden of the environmental poisoning of communities, the lack of housing, the lack of water. And so to so decisively excise women from a historical political narrative is unforgivable. And I was surprised that there wasn't more of an outcry about that. But so that was my major critique of the film, and it's not that I'm saying it wasn't an important film. It is an important film. It was a film that showed the public, something that would have created, it would have needed a lot of analysis, or somebody was involved in like covering the Marikana story over an extended period of time. So in that respect, it was a good film. But to export a film to package it for a European audience, in a way that's palatable and almost a form of entertainment, cowboys and Indians, type of narrative, which is clearly a ploy that, filmmakers can use to commercialize a story in order to, there's a lot of reasons for making films. One is the capitalization of stories for capital gain. And I just thought that it was a little bit expedient in that respect. Sorry.
It's okay, because I think we're getting the gist that you didn't feel that it was necessarily fair or balanced in terms of representing all the relevant voices that are involved in this particular issue. But I think I want to cross over to Nklo, because I think it might be also interesting talking about voices that are not included, just to find out from young people what they have to say about particularly this document. Nklo, can I just come to you, please?
Indeed, Jackie, thank you very much for that. And of course, this is a documentary by Rahat Desai, Miners Shot Down, which came under harsh criticism from some critics who came out to say it did not really articulate the actual views of the people on the ground. Now, as journalists who extensively covered the Marikana massacre, I think it's also important we put the spotlight on this. That's why Uputi right there in front, I may ask you to please stand up, Uputi, just to give us your take on what you think about the documentary as a whole.
So for someone who has followed the Marikana story for a few years, when I watched the documentary, it did also put into light the reality of the situation, the reality of death, the reality of the violence around that. And it dawned on one that someone must take responsibility, because you can see when you follow the documentary that there were a clear series of coordinated plans to get to the point that we got to. We didn't get to that point by incident. And the lack of accountability so many years later really hurts one, because it shows how far we've gone in terms of a social distance as South Africans and as human beings, that we can be able to kill each other in that cold blood, and no one can take responsibility for it.
Perhaps, Buti, the question I also should be asking is, who should be taking accountability? Who should take accountability for those killings?
We need to see moral accountability through apologies from the state, personal apologies to families. We need to see material accountability through compensation of those families. And finally, we need to see criminal accountability for the entire chain of command from where it started to where it ended up until those live rounds were shot. It should not be only a police person, some junior police person in the Northwest who takes responsibility for it. That was a clear series of coordinated attacks or of coordinated shooting, and it definitely came from a much higher level. So we need to see political accountability at that level as well, and we need to see people going on trial and going to prison for that.
All right, perhaps we can also move on the microphone, please, to this gentleman right over. Yes, sir. I just would like to find out from you, because I saw you also had some articulate views just before we were about to start the program. I want to find out from you, what would your take be in terms of who takes accountability? He mentioned that one of the senior officers in the Northwest, of course, resigned. Is this not enough, perhaps?
Well,
can I ask you to stand? Thank you.
Sure. Well, I do not believe that there can never be enough accountability, because the lives will never be brought back. Here we're speaking about fathers, we're speaking about husbands, we're speaking about lives of black people who seem to be cheap in the eye of the state and those who have money. So what kind of accountability are we looking for? If really right now the same conditions are happening still in Marikana, there is no way that we can never be happy. And those who are responsible, they must know that we shall never forgive them as young people. We will always remember it, and we'll never, ever forget this thing.
All right. Perhaps we can get some more views right here in the audience. Ma'am, I know, before we go back to Jackie, that you've also said that you felt that the documentary, Miners Shot Down, was a balanced view. Njengomuntu omusha uthini ngayo?
Okay, from what I got from the documentary, I clearly saw intentional police brutality. I mean, this was like a group of people who stood against fighting the system that sought to take away their future, the same way it took away the future of their fathers, you know. I mean, like, they were merely looking for salary increases, you know. And on the final day, if I remember correctly, on the 16th, the 12th, the final day, I mean, like, they were going home peacefully, and then that's when the open fight shots happened. So I feel like it was kind of unfair. It shows also some elements of capitalism and stuff like that, that, you know what, the state really needs to apologize from my view. And I don't think there'll ever be accountability for the massacre.
All right. And of course, okay, we'll come back to the floor once again. Okay, maybe we can still pass it on. I think we still do have some time. Yes, sir, what would you like to add onto the conversation?
Yes, what I would like to add is that the people who were at front, who were leading us by that time, should take accountability. If you check the imbalances that were happening that day, is that the people were killed, people were injured. Those who were injured and those who were killed must be compensated. We're talking about mothers, we're talking about fathers here. We're talking about husbands. Those who today, the children who don't have parents today, that the parents died during that incident, they must be compensated. We're talking about children who are not going to be able to afford food. We're talking about children who are not going to be able to afford education. Those are one of the basic needs that need to be fulfilled. So the state as a whole must be held accountable, and the people who are at front must ensure that they compensate and ensure that they guarantee the growth of the lost one to a culmination. Thank you.
And Jackie, perhaps I think what's really interesting is that on Miners Shot Down, the documentary itself, we saw how the likes of Ronnie Castros, the then former Minister of Intelligence, came out to say that perhaps heads should roll from the bottom up. What would the panelists have to add to this? Because seemingly accountability is something as Lucas Kuluma Ngayo.
And, you know, I want to bring in the important element of responsibility as filmmakers to ensure that it's objective and it's not biased. And I think you were speaking about this a little bit, Gillian, to say that, you know, the voice of dissent in the documentary is also missing. The fact that there are missing voices, can we take it on face value that this is a representation of the narrative that represents Marikana? What is your take on that?
Well, look, the narrative was pretty much pushed by the filmmaker himself. So the story of Marikana was pretty much in the distance a lot of the time in that film. And then there were a few people, you know, that spoke from the community. I think there were one or two people. So I don't think the narrative was as such about the people in Marikana. It was about an event that happened in Marikana. And it's terrible to call it an event because it's, or an ordeal, you know, it was an absolute tragedy. So I can't really answer that question because I didn't hear any narrative from the people. We didn't even get to see how people lived there. You know, and I suppose for me it was very glaring. One, I'm a documentarian myself. So secondly, I've been in the area quite a lot, you know. So all those things were very obvious as a viewer. But, you know, I'm hearing other people that absence wasn't noticed by them. But we had no sense of the community. We had no sense of the living conditions. We had no sense of anything except the actual massacre itself and the kind of whodunit story around that. The glaring omission as well was the fact that Lonmin, the top management in Lonmin, or the London office, was not at all, it was overlooked completely in the film. And so again, it became this type of, I mean, it's not just that it's state and a corporatized state and its relationship with unions, you know, that bring all workers under one umbrella, you know, and work with corporates are not to blame. As well.
And I think that's an important point to make, and I just want to find out from you, Bishop. I mean, is this a fair representation of the narrative? I want to hear from you.
Well, I think what actually happened is that it became agent for the producer to tell the story, to expose the lie of the system, the cruelties that is in it, and therefore he had to tell the story without really pulling all the players together. And I think he has done well in terms of opening the debate, putting the narrative on the agenda of many people. Overseas people talk about it. It's very challenging. It's very painful to watch. It makes you very angry. And I think that's where we should be coming in to say, well, things went wrong, and we all agree. But therefore, there is need for us as a people, as a nation, to come together and do something. I really believe that we should be calling a CODESA, because there are many varying voices, opinions, but they're not consolidated, they're not coordinated. People say this and that, some are apologetic about it, some take it as an event that happened. So we believe it was something that was planned, executed to show how powerful the state is. And so we can blame the apartheid regime. But
sorry to cut you, Bishop. I mean, I understand it. And I think for you, Aliki, I want to find out from you in terms of what everybody has said. I mean, here we're talking about, you know, the powerful oppressing the, you know, the least powerful, and then we're talking about the fact that there's a lack of dissent in the documentary itself. I mean, what is your take? I want to give you the final say before we go into ad break.
Sure. I think as documentary filmmakers, you know, I think it's dangerous for one documentary to be the kind of epitomizing the final say of any situation. I feel like there needs to be conversations, there needs to be varying voices that create a movement. That, you know, lots of different films, different writings about it, and to kind of try and create all of the different voices that build towards a particular movement. And I think so that was very important also for Strike.
So let me cut you.
Sure.
I'll let you continue definitely after this. And of course, we had been promising that Uriya had decided, who is actually the documentarian of Miners Shot Down, will actually be on the show. But unfortunately, we've just been experiencing a few technical glitches, and it does not look like he will actually be participating in the show today. But I think we've got enough voices to actually be representative in terms of this particular issue that we're discussing. Stay with us. You're watching Expressions.
Hi Expressions, I'm Linda Lwakoti and I'm your street journal for today. As we all know that August marks the 60th anniversary of the Marikana massacre, we are asking the public what they know about the incident and if they feel that the government has done enough for the victims' families. Let's hear what they have to say.
I know that Marikana was a strike, a mine strike that took place in the northwest, where there was like a whole fight and commotion between the police officers and the mine workers, where the police officers, I don't know how many people they shot dead, but quite a few people lost their lives in the Marikana strike.
A couple of people actually died while they were protesting, I think. Or on wasn't 2012, yeah, it wasn't on 2012, yeah. That's all I know, I think.
Like you can't get 4,000 while you're underground, and someone who's on top is getting approximately 28,000 for just telling you what to do. So I think they were fighting for a good cause, and though their fight at the beginning, they had no weapons, so they were fighting for a good cause, and I think it was a great thing.
What we know is that we know Marikana, which is located in Northwest, that's all.
So you don't know anything that transpired in August in 2012?
No, not at all. Not at all.
One thing I know is a lot of people got killed, innocent people. Yeah, that's about it, yeah.
Miners were fighting, or they had a conflict with the policemen due to the salary increase. They wanted the salary to be increased and all that. So many people died in the scene. Yeah,
which is well known as the the Marikana massacre because of the large killings.
What I don't know much, but then I saw the documentary yesterday, which is the thing that happened during the strike in Marikana, and then people just like is it Mzokolo, the one who is the leader of the strike. He mentioned that they didn't do a strike to harm people, but they did it just to complain about their payments.
Some interesting perspectives there coming from that insert that we put together. And my panel has changed, and I'm loving it because we have more women and one gentleman. Let me just introduce them. I've got Umam Primrose Sonti, who is the founder of Sikhala Sonke Women's Organization. I am also joined by Nonzamo Zondo, who is representing the Socioeconomic Rights Institute. I'm also joined by Professor Susan Boyson, who is a political analyst from Mapungubwe Institute. I think my tongue twisting is a little bit worse than yours. But I'm going to ask the gentleman to introduce himself. My good sir, only because I want to give you the spotlight. So if that's okay, I want to, because you are a thorn among the roses.
I'm Nkume Andres. I'm the first attorney to arrive at Marikana, and I represent the injured and arrested.
Excellent, excellent. So welcome to the show. And I think because we do have, you know, women on the panel, and August is important. August is important for women, and I think I want to start with you, Mam Sonti, in terms of the organization that you have initiated, and what headway have you made in terms of, you know, fighting for the rights of women on the ground in terms of Marikana?
I'm Primrose Sonti from Marikana, informal settlement. So, as the massacre which has happened in Marikana in 2012, it touched us as women because we are the women, and then those mine workers are the brothers, are the fathers, are the husbands. So as Imbogodo, we decided to act. As you say, the August month is the month for the women.
And I want to bring Andres into the conversation around the wheels of justice. Are they turning fast enough? Are we seeing some kind of compensation? Are we seeing justice? I think that's a simple question. Are we seeing justice when it comes to Marikana?
Look, I think we should say and emphasize the fact that we have always maintained that the massacre took place as a result of the characterization of the labor dispute as a dastardly criminal act by the current president, Cyril Ramaphosa. So we are not seeing enough being done. We are not seeing compensation being paid. We are not seeing anything being offered to the people that are affected by the massacre. And up until such time as that happens, I take it that will still be a long way. You would have to imagine that come Friday, this coming Friday, it will be the beginning of the 7th year after the massacre took place. And I don't think we're seeing enough that's been done by the state.
Professor Susan, I want to bring you in on board in terms of just this discussion. Is it really a fair analysis to say that, the current Liberal government is repressive, that, I read somewhere that they said that they're anti-poor and they don't care about the lives of people. Is that really a fair analysis?
South Africa is such a complex, such a diverse country, and we know that, and government realizes itself too, that by far not enough is being done. There, of course, are areas in which there's been progress. Much has changed in the last 25 years, but that is not enough by anyone's standard. And so, and here Marikana really brings that to the foreground as well, because Marikana is such a microcosmos of South Africa's vast inequalities, of the problems of class, of race in many respects, of gender, and all these inequalities are there, amidst this mine that is so rich in resources, platinum rich, etc., a mine that has got electricity and water. Communities live in squalor. Many people always draw the parallel between Sandton and Alexandra in Johannesburg. In Marikana, it's right there. And Marikana then, that is those socioeconomic inequalities superimposed by often continuously very poor and poor working conditions, poor remuneration for work, and then there are labor tensions and there are political tensions, like the EFF in many respects, and radical South Africans have found a very fertile ground in Marikana and have advanced that the agenda of poor people, and we know Winnie Madikizela Mandela is welcome there, Julius Malema is there. Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma was driven from that community when she wanted to campaign there last year. So it is really such a volatile, explosive situation concentrated in one community. And in many respects, that is representative of political problems in South Africa as well.
But the question is it fair to use the same brushstroke, especially when they talk about, pre-liberation and post-liberation? Is it really fair to paint them with the same brushstroke to say that this is almost like the 1960 massacre that we saw? Nomzama, I'm going to bring you on board after this. Please stay with us. We're going to continue this also important conversation right after the break. Stay with us.
That day, that year, that month, our father's brother's uncle died during their fight with police. They were only fighting for their remunerations. They were only fighting for their rights. But police had took their lives as if they didn't deserve to live in this life, in this planet. That day I saw helicopters flying around like an insect. I saw police roaming around in the street. Ithiya gas ibisibethe emehlweni singazi noba sithini singabantwana sibancinci. Beka manje nikhulile ndimngaka. That day, it seems like the Minister of Police who allowed those police to shoot down those people have forgotten that in isiXhosa they say ubuntu is ubuntu ngabantu. They have forgotten that Nelson Rolihlahla Tatu Mandela have said, never and ever again shall it be. And I saw blood flying down like an orange river. That day, that night, le mali le bayifuna abantu badala nayo zange bayitholi. Abakayitholi nangoku.
Okay, yini ke into ngahle ufuna ukuyibona ukuthi yenzakala ukuthi kube khona ushintsho?
Angihela ubona abantu beprovide lama RDPs. Babekho job opportunities ngoba nyane ngoyilona mina ngathi ayisaqhatshe. Abantu there is high unemployment rate.
Wow, you can't help but be emotional when you listen to the stories of young people depicting their experience on the ground when it comes to this particular issue. And as promised before the break, I'd said that I'd bring Unonzama into this conversation. And I think just before the break, in between the break, we were talking about the dominant narrative that is coming across through this documentary. But I think I want us to always remember that because this is a youth platform, I want us to bring in the voices of young people. I mean, we know that there are no compensations currently, and you've mentioned it, Andrew. How is this impacting the legacy, the generation of young people that are coming from that community? I mean, when we're talking about fees must fall and movements such as those, are they getting to those kinds of places? Are we remembering that young people are also part and parcel of this narrative that we're talking about?
Look, I think we have to remember that firstly, Marikana was a youth revolt. It was led by the youth. The majority of the men who died at that mountain were young men in their mid-20s up to their early 30s. And even if we look at it now, we look at who is left behind. We have the survivors of the massacre, the injured and arrested miners, who continue the struggle for a living wage. But we also have to continue to fight over the narrative, to say we're not multi-crazed miners who attacked the police. We were workers who were fighting for the value of our labor, right? And that's a story for the youth. And what has happened with Marikana is that inspired fees must fall. That inspired communities whose informal settlements are now called Marikana. In the Western Cape, in KwaZulu-Natal, here in Gauteng, we have all these informal settlements that where people have said, we want to say enough is enough, this is what we demand. And if we're demanding, we're demanding land. If we're demanding free education, that's what we're demanding. And that came as a result of a few young men who were from the rural Eastern Cape, rural Swaziland, rural Lesotho, standing up and saying, we will define our futures. And it wasn't just about their labor in Marikana. They were saying, we are from the Eastern Cape where there are no roads, where there are no clinics, where there's poor education, and we want these mines to invest there, to make sure that our kids don't have the very same future. One of the stories of this massacre is that we have Utabisile Yawa, who's sent to go to Impala to replace his father because his father has become sick. And his father sends him there to replace him. He gets another job at London. And then what happens is that he dies. Part of the story of Marikana is that the families then at some point said, people are starving at home. There's no food on the table. We need to make sure that there's people who earn a living. And one of the sons asked his father, Father, how are you going to send my brother to Marikana? How can you send him there to die? And earlier you spoke about the fact that how do we compare the apartheid government to this government? That government didn't apologize for the Sharpeville massacre. They didn't apologize for 1976. This government hasn't apologized for Marikana.
Let me cut you there. Let me cut you there. And I want to bring it to Mko right now. I mean, these are really powerful points. Mko, please, can we just get maybe some of the insights from women who are on the ground, the widows who are on the ground in terms of what Unonzama was speaking about?
Thank you very much for that, Jackie. Well, mangizokhulumisana nawe busakhuluma nami ngitshela ukuthi awukaboni mina ushintsho eMarikana.
Hayi angikalibona utshintsho ngisangathi kuyakuba ngoba akho nto ndiyibonayo mina eqhubekayo ibandle nezindlu kusenjalo nendlela kusenjalo akho nto i-right nje tu.
Mhlawumbe mama masingakhuluma ufuna ukubona kwenzakalani?
Ndifuna mna ungase ungatshintsha kwakhiwe izindlu kwakhiwe indlela ngoba kukho ingxaki phaa ukuthi xa ngaba kugula umuntu asikwazi umthatha xa kunethile imvula simse esibhedlela kunzima kubi nje kuludaka nje
mana
i-distance yokuba ubeleka umuntu umse endleleni enhle ehamba imoto uthatha ixesha elide uhamba ngenyawo uhamba nalo muntu akhona ubungaqhubeka iriver kumanzi kunethile.
Ingane zona mangabe ziya esikolweni ngabe ziyathola ukusizakala ngokwezimali?
Andiboni kusizwa ke andikazi ke kulondawo noqoka.
All right, of course, let's get some more youth perspective here, sir. Without even putting words in your mouth, I saw you getting there edgy. I just want to know, what would your take be to some of the words that have been coming out from our panelists?
Sure, thank you very much. My name is Mphahlele Paswan Mpo from UGS Word Campus. Look, I think we need to first understand that what we're engaging on here, it's in the public sphere and not in the private sphere, right?
There are elements in government that defines what actions of government should come out to be and what should not come out to be. But to be brief and very short, there is a political inspiration that happened to the Marikana massacre in 2012, to which the current President of the Republic is responsible for. But I think equally it's important to quote the scholar that we come from, which is Lenin, that the state is the same organ with which our people continues to be exploited, right? Now, what happens in South Africa is that the elites, the group of people who are in government or government officials, so to say, do everything that is contrary to the so-called constitutional law, and they are never held accountable. Tell you what, there is a strike that erupted in the form of Fees Must Fall, and one of our own is being detained to 8 years sentence called Kaya Kayeshe. He is held accountable for a genuine discourse to which even the President of the Republic, the former rather, pronounced free education. So we need to understand that the socio-political landscape led to a very derailing socio-economic space in the space of Marikana. And we need to resolve that as a youth. As to good, we know how.
Thank you very much for that indeed. And of course, Mbugele nawo lapha ekhaya njengoba usuzwile phela sikhuluma about the all-important Marikana documentary that was screened khona la ekhaya ku SABC 1 by Urehard Desai. Now this all-important conversation continues when we return. This is Expressions.
Welcome back. You are still watching Expressions here on SABC 1. We're talking about the also important issue around Marikana. And of course, some of, the robust conversations that we're having tonight have gotten a lot of us thinking, right? And of course, I'm joined by another two wonderful females on the panel today, and I just want to introduce them. I'm joined by Mandisa Mashego, who is from the EFF, and I'm also joined by Refilwe Nteke, who is from DASO. Ladies, welcome. We always finish best to last, ne? Perfect. I mean, we have to wrap this up. I think there's so much that can be said about this particular issue, but I think Marikana is something that's happened, and we can never change that. Now we want to talk about moving forward. How do we ensure that we bring the necessary impact, the necessary I suppose, change to make sure that something like this never happens again? Professor?
Well, in the first place, proper training under constraint in the face of protests of security forces and police in particular, and to ensure that through just conditions and negotiation, but especially with just guaranteed outcome, and faster, effective movement by the mining companies who are employing so many people who they depend on, ensure that that all comes together and we never, ever see a Marikana again.
Mandisa?
You can't say that we must get over it. The reason we are in this crisis is because we had a negotiated settlement, which the ANC sold us out on. If mines were nationalized, we would not have been in this crisis where Cyril Ramaphosa and his 27% enrollment has resulted in this because he was taking care of that. We can't. Cyril Ramaphosa needs to go to jail. He's the one that gave the directive for that provincial commissioner to bring mortuary vans. How do you take a mortuary van to a strike? When black people are demanding money, they must be killed. The ANC is killing people in Gauteng daily. Okay, at protests. We're not going to get over it. We'll get over it once there's justice. And there won't be justice unless black workers, because we have an anti-black state. We have an anti-black ANC government. And so this ANC government is co-opted into, profiteering and capital. Yeah. And their interest is to promote the interests of capital, and we can't allow that. Yeah. So the workers must get what is due to them. But also people must go to jail. We can't keep forgiving people. So we forgave the Nazis. We can't continue forgiving.
So accountability is going to be important in that case. Can I just let you also give some closing comments there, Refilwe?
No, thank you. I think I'm going to start at the beginning. When the bishop talked about healing, I think it's a spit in the face of women and broadly South African women. The fact that SAPS or Lonmil couldn't make it here today it's not only an insult to the women of Marikana, but to insult of South African women at large. This would be the beginning of healing by coming here and actually taking acknowledgement for what happened.
Yeah.
For them not even making the effort is actually shoddy, and it shows that there is no intention to do anything better.
Yeah.
And the fact that women are the ones who left with poverty, taking after children, and the compensation has not happened till today.
Unfortunately,
that still
we're going to have
says
to leave it here. We're going to have
spit
to
in the
leave it
face
here.
of women.
We're going to have to leave
Women
it
are
here.
not taken seriously by this government.
Yes, we hear you. We hear you. Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for having to cut you. Thank you for your insights and your input. It was a hot show.
It was indeed a great one, Jackie. And of course, once again, we wish Ubuti this whole Marikana, story that has been going on now can come to a finality, and all the families can get the closure that they need. Lao Lapikaya, thank you so much for joining us this evening. See Expressions, we thank you so much for being with us this evening. Do take care and have a spectacular evening going forward. I'm Olisi Masango. Good night.
Goodbye.